Adam Taxin here with Rabbi Nochum Kurinsky of Chabad at the Beaches in Ponte Vedra Beach, Florida, which can be found at chabadbeaches.com. We are now talking about the Torah reading for the first Shabbos of 2014, which is Parsha Bo, and that is starting chapter 10 of Exodus. All right, I haven't reviewed it yet. What's going on?
Okay, so the Torah portion this week deals with the final of the three plagues. Right, we had all the plagues that took place in last week's Torah portion: the blood, Nile turned to blood, and the frogs, and lice, and the wild, and you know, etc. The wild animals, and the grasshoppers, boils, hail. Right. So you have some really incredible plagues. And then the Torah continues this week with really the last of the three plagues. But what's interesting is you find...
What are those last three plagues again, just for the audience?
So, grasshoppers, or the locusts, and the plague of darkness, which is an incredible plague. And then you have the plague of the death of the firstborn, which is those were right, finally the last of the three. But what we find a very interesting change. First of all, the very fact that the plagues, 7 plagues took place in one Torah portion, the last 3 take place in another portion, teaches us that these 7, those 7, and the 3 of this week's Torah portion are somewhat different. And they're different in several ways. One of them is that they're much harsher. These are plagues, the plague that we're about. First plague, the plague of locusts, attacks the food supply. Then you have the plague of darkness, in which many of the Jewish people pass away. Actually,
I heard 80%.
80% of the Jews pass away, and only God didn't want the Egyptians to have the pleasure of watching the Jews die. And the plague of the firstborn, which actually started to kill off the Egyptians one by one, because the oldest would die, and then the next would come. And Pharoah himself was the firstborn, and then of course the word Passover.
He was the only one who survived, though, right?
The one who survived. The word Passover is God passed over the homes of the Jewish people, and there comes our Exodus, and the holiday that celebrates it is called Passover. God passed over. But an interesting thing about these 3 plagues is that you find that unlike the other plagues, in these plagues the Torah tells us, God hardened Pharaoh's heart. He made Pharaoh no longer hardened his own heart. God actually hardened his heart. And that leads a lot of great commentaries to question the whole concept of free choice. I mean, the first 7 plagues, look, Pharaoh was a bad guy, and he wanted to hurt the Jewish people, and he deserved what was coming. But these plagues, God hardened his heart. How do we explain freedom of choice? How do we explain that Pharaoh is in fact evil and deserves the punishment if it's God's doing to him? So there are different commentaries, they take different approaches.
Or let me just ask, was it because he softened after the 7 plagues, he needed that reinforcement of a hardening of heart?
That could be, that's an approach that people take. Others say that since he had resisted God so much, the point that a person has freedom of choice to a point, and then when they reach a certain point, you could almost become poisoned. It's almost as if if someone acts in such a, we have a prayer where we say God lifts the fallen, he heals the sick, and then he revives the dead. And the Jewish mysticism teaches us that all 3 are talking about ourselves. And sometimes we fall, and something negative happens in our life. We slip up, we do something that we're not proud of. So God helps us out. Sometimes we get a little too deep into something, and so we get into bad habits, and we're considered sick, and God still helps us. And sometimes we're dead. Someone has an addiction where they're so poisoned, or a compulsion where they're so poisoned, and they feel they're dead. They're not able to lift themselves out. And that's where Pharaoh was. He was so evil at that point that he couldn't. That he was completely poisoned. And yet the Torah tells us an interesting thing. God exists, past, present, and future altogether. Time is not linear for him. So no matter what happens, even if we do something wrong, God can always, we do tshuva, we repent, and we're sorry for what we did, we commit never to do it again. God can always go back in our past and with active tshuva, return, can help us correct our past. Even if someone is this ill, someone is this convicted. So this into sinning, Hashem considers there's something called a higher level of tshuva, where a higher level of return, where a person can reach the point where God says, I can harden your heart, I'm the one who can save you. Even a person who's that sick can be saved. Even Pharoah wasn't beyond saving at that point.
So what's the key lesson to people?
The key lesson that we should never give up any hope, and that no matter how far we feel that we're away, sometimes we have to work on ourselves a little harder, sometimes we have to reach in a little bit deeper to find that connection to God, but there's always help. There's always hope, but we can always reconnect, and we're never at a point where we're lost. It's impossible.
Thank you, Rabbi Nochum Kurinsky, Chabad at the Beaches, Ponte Vedra Beach, Florida, ChabadBeaches.com.